Arizona. My name is Josue Romero, and this is the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. Welcome back. I am excited to introduce our guest today. Go ahead, please.
My name is Rebecca Vouched Sandhu. I'm here with my husband, Lucky Sandhu.
Awesome, Rebecca. Thanks for introducing yourself. And I'm sure the audience would love to know. Tell us a little bit about your background. Do you traditionally come from tech? Did you grow up in tech? What does that look like?
No, did not grow up in tech, and I think I'm part of a generation that's going to be cloud enabled. I found my way around tech. We found a problem, and we started using the tools that are here with us right now to start solving it. So no, I did not come up in tech.
Nice. Yes, I've actually seen what I want to call mid to later career professionals on LinkedIn have these epiphanies where they say, hey, or some, I literally, one of our pillar partners, no, one of our ambassadors, known relatives, there's layoffs. There's layoffs. Aren't AI trained, whatever that means these days.
Yeah.
And then no one really knows. And then they kind of figure it out and everyone's trying to navigate it. So I'm actually extremely intrigued to hear the things that you have found out and what led you to going into tech.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of funny that we found our way here because of a string of bad bosses, which everyone has experienced. And after enough layoffs or enough office politics that you don't navigate well, or things that you can't control, you find yourself kind of wondering, how vulnerable am I in
Yeah.
order to make a living for myself? And how do I remove the vulnerability? And that's where all this started. We were just trying to figure out how not to be at the helm of, or not at somebody else's whim as far as our financial safety goes, and someone being able to take that. So we knew we needed to create an income stream that we owned,
Yep.
that was ours. We just didn't know it was going to end up being an HR tech startup company. That was not on the radar.
It is cool that it was on the radar at all now, because I feel like, at least I'm 31 right now, but in my late teens, I always heard it as well, where it was, hey, make sure you have some sort of way to income for yourself. And people would say, you just don't know when you're replaceable. And you hear it and you're like, okay, I guess a lot of people say, yeah, I'll get there when I get there. But with the implementation of AI, I think it just hit so many people way faster than they ever thought it would.
Yeah, shockingly. And you see it 8,000 people at a time. All of a sudden they
Yep.
find themselves, and these are not these are very highly skilled, highly trained individuals that are looking around saying, okay, what do I do now? I was just part of a flood that just inundated
Yes.
the market. How am I supposed to separate myself from the pack? And you know the two places they go? They go to Indeed and they go to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And in both situations, Indeed is not serving a market. They have a setup, have their name out there, but they are not actually serving well. And then you look at LinkedIn, that's also confused about who they are and what their mission
Yeah.
is. And it's become much more content socially driven, not
Yeah.
for job seekers. And so we saw this over and over. And as you see layoffs happening, if those are the only two places people turn to, well, there's a void there in the market. And that's when entrepreneurs say, I have an idea.
Okay, and that's my favorite part. I say this on every episode. I don't care that I repeat it over and over. My favorite part about getting to meet so many founders, literally on a weekly basis, multiple, is that, especially in Arizona, you'll have people who don't come from tech and they're like, there's a problem. And they look around and they're like, oh, okay, no one's solving it. I'll do it myself.
Yes.
And then they just step into that. So please, explain a little bit about how HR tech, something you didn't plan to be into, is now part of your lives.
Yeah, we realized the submission of a resume was very one-dimensional. It's very flat.
Yes.
And then you look at everything AI can do and the way you can present yourself online. How do you capture that in a document that's supposed that is the 80s, that is the 90s, that is the 2000s, that is not 2026. So we were like, okay, well, if I was a job seeker, I would want a profile that allowed me to have vouches, which we consider a peer review. If I could holler at one of my friends and be like, hey, we work together, do you mind vouching for me? And they're able to actually say, I worked with you here and here, and this is how long we worked together. This is who you are as a person. This is what you're capable of. And that appear on my profile, I win.
Yeah.
Then I start to look at, well, how do I show for people my age that are getting laid off due to AI,
Yeah.
but going back to school to learn AI skills, That's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Universities can't keep up with the technology in order to provide a curriculum that matters.
Yeah, for
So,
anyone of any age, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's like, how do I show that I am AI literate? And we were like, well, there's a lot of great content out there, but it's swimming in this sea of YouTube. So we were like, what if we curated a library? What if
Yeah.
we identified who those people are and you started to earn some sort of recognition for completing those modules?
Hmm.
That also matters in a job profile.
Yeah.
So there's two distinguishing factors right there. And then we thought, this was actually Nate B. Jones. If you don't know who
Cool.
he is amazing. Just a voice in the AI space right now. But he
Okay.
started talking about how you can separate yourself if you are a job seeker right now. And what he described was essentially training an AI agent so that an employer could interact with you and your
Yep.
responses in this agent. And that gives it this depth and this meaning. And it's way beyond
Oh, cool.
a resume. And we're like, we can build that in. So
Yeah.
and yet right there is your job seeker side, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, we are trying to serve this market of people that find themselves looking for work, may not be tooled for the next job, and they're in a pool of very highly trained professionals right now. So
Interesting. Yeah, I actually have a friend who applied for this one job the other day. I mean, who isn't almost at this point, just to cover their bases, right?
yeah.
But he was telling me that he submitted this application for this startup, and I asked him, "Oh, have you heard back?" And he was like, "Yeah, I probably didn't get past the ATS system." That was just such
Oh
an
yeah.
automatic answer. It wasn't, "Oh, yeah, they gave me an update," or "I'm sure someone's looking at my application." No, it is
Yeah.
just this robot meets robot type of scenario where
Yes.
you kind of have to have both doing the work for both now to have a fair chance, not
Yeah.
even a sporting, just a fair.
Yeah, it is the battle of the bots.
Yeah.
Like they've got a bot and you've got a bot and who can navigate the bot better. And it's funny that he knew what an ATS is because when
Yeah.
we look at the other side of the software system, we are speaking specifically to a company that may
Mhm.
not be able to afford an ATS. If you are running a company, especially a large company that has an HR department, you are probably paying 10, 20, 30, maybe even $40,000 a year for a
Jeez.
software to have that bot frontage. And all it's doing is filtering people's resumes. Again, a one-dimensional
Yeah.
qualification. But that doesn't serve the market either. So we're
No, not
looking
at
at,
all, I don't think.
even here in Arizona, you asked like, why Arizona? Well, here in Arizona, there are over 200,000 small businesses, somewhere
Mhm.
between one, two people, maybe up to 300 people. These companies don't have HR departments. They're lucky
Yeah.
if they have one person that's dedicated to this job.
No,
So,
agreed. I mean, I work for a 7-person startup,
yeah,
and then I have a nonprofit where the operating team's 3 people big.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know when we're gonna think about HR, but I know at some point it's absolutely necessary to make sure people have their processes and procedures and the
Yeah.
appropriate timelines, right?
And if you were going to go out and find help, you probably have a pretty nice network that you can tap into and get the word out that, hey, I'm looking for this kind of person. Do you know this person?
Mhm.
And that does work to an extent.
Yeah.
But if you've got a whole market of people that were just laid off and they're from, Apple or they're from
Yeah,
Facebook
no,
or they're from,
jeez.
these are pretty highly qualified people, but maybe they are looking for that small mom and pop startup where they can really make a difference and they can really
Mhm.
step in and influence the growth of something that sometimes it's out of their control if they're at a big company. So we're looking at that and we're like, all right, so if you don't have an HR department, how do we help you protect yourself when you've got issues of blind merit? How
Mm.
do you qualify these candidates and not discriminate and prove that you didn't discriminate? Well, that was part of the features of our system.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, just for example, like that really starts to matter when you start to say, I'm not biased and I can show you that.
Mhm.
And our software helps you do that.
Oh, that's really neat. I don't
Yeah.
think I've heard of anyone tackle it and acknowledge that that
Yeah.
exists in that type
Totally.
of setting as well. And that seems like one of the most fair ways, you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
to assess someone. It's really silly because, look, I love the world of tech, and people have heard me gripe about it before, but it is largely unfair.
Yep.
It is largely certain people from certain backgrounds. And I'm not even talking about any type of race here. It's just
Right.
the only reason I got into tech was I stumbled into NYU and accidentally stumbled into tech and venture capital, and now here
Yeah.
I am. But you look around and you're just like, oh, okay, like folks help their own folks. And
Yeah.
usually you need, at least when working in venture capital or at a high growth startup, they say they admire grit and all that stuff. And then you look and it's like, oh, ex Facebook, ex Harvard. Okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
find it extremely hard to believe personally that those are the only people who can do extraordinary, hard, gritty things. My opinion,
Right.
which is why I'm like, hey, that sounds really cool. Like just blind fair to a degree
Yes.
assessment of candidates and
Yeah.
their abilities, their skills, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and going back to your friend, you were saying like they never heard back. They don't know what happened. They know it got caught up in the bot, and when that
Yeah,
happens, it's like yelling into the void, and
he's
there's
still
no
waiting to
echo
hear
back.
back. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
he expects to or not. I assume he doesn't.
yeah, and that's sad. It's sad because
Mm,
I remember growing up, you always heard back. I mean, it was a
yeah,
classified ad. You saw it run for a certain amount of time. You sent in your
absolutely.
resume and you heard an echo back, and the signals were strong on both sides. And I think that's been interrupted by technology, but also by third party recruiters. I think there's
Yeah,
been a lot of noise that's been added in there. And so when we looked at how do we make sure that a job seeker is being seen,
yeah.
we've actually built that into anything that an employer does on their side. You will see what is going on with your application.
Hmm.
It will have a color code that moves you along the progression of your application. And if you're not a match, you're going to know that too. If you're only 20% of what they're looking for, that doesn't put you in a good
Strong
position.
position.
But
Yeah.
if you see a 92% match and all of a sudden they have started to look at your profile,
Hmm.
that is hope. That is
Yeah.
excitement for a job seeker that has the other experience where they don't even know if someone saw them.
No, that's awesome to hear. I finished my undergrad back in 2021, right? And it was interesting because growing up, it was the whole boomer thing where they say,
Yeah.
"Hey, shake someone's hand
Yeah.
and get a job." It worked for me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are really just afraid to follow through with those types of steps. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll ridicule just anyone who gives that advice. And I'm like, look, my very first job out of college, I did my undergrad in marketing, and I remember I reached out via email to this marketing agency. I'm like, hey, I'll
Mhm.
work for free. Would love for you just to give me a shot. I can come in. And
Yeah.
they're like, sure. And then that happened. And then my next job when I got into PR tech, same thing. I reached out, heard back same day. I had a job 3 weeks later for the job I'm at right now, the startup. I had tried to get my friend a job there and it didn't work out with her because she had a job. She also went to NYU, so she had a standing offer out in New York.
Yeah.
But I called them and I was like, if not her, why not me? By that same evening, I had a signed contract to start with that team.
Wow.
So I'm not saying, right, that that's going to work for everyone, but I do love that for the people who might not want to do that and still are trying really hard to get a job.
Yeah.
You can see the progress because most of the time, for anything
Yeah.
else I've tried, which I didn't try too much application blasting, I just knew it felt like a deep black hole that I was
Yeah.
never gonna hear anything back from.
Yeah. And I think the restoration of trust between those two parties, what's
Mhm.
happened because of the bots is that, employers don't believe that it's a real person that's sending the resume,
Yeah.
and the job seeker doesn't think it's a real job or a real company on the other end. So if we can rebuild that trust starting off, like any relationship, it needs to start on solid footing
Yeah.
and it needs to start on a good foundation. And the way it's designed right now, that's not happening. And so again, there's a problem. There's a problem
No.
here. We can solve this.
And then what was the biggest driving motivator for that? I know you mentioned you had a similar background where you wanted to prepare, but is there a pivotal moment or did you see someone go through something that just tipped the glass of water over?
Yeah, I call it our 101 conversation. We were
Mm,
actually driving to meet some business partners, and the more Lucky and I were turning over this idea of what does this look like, I'm like, all these people are getting burned by AI.
yeah.
So wouldn't it be funny if we called it the AI burn center? Like, people go to a burn center for treatment,
Yeah.
but they also have to overcome their fear of fire in most situations. But what if we could help them overcome and master AI because it's not going anywhere?
Yeah.
And I'm like that. And then like this whole idea of job seeker connecting to employer. Well, that's something else. So that's where Vouched came from.
Okay.
We call it Vouched.fyi. It's up and running. And so
Oh,
from the time of that 101 conversation to it going live June 21st was 41 days. And
wow.
I think it's a record. I don't know, but I mean, we were up a lot of nights because it was so exciting.
Yep.
The more
Yes.
problems we saw that we could fix, the more Claude, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many tokens we ran out of. It was like you can't talk anymore until 3 a.m.
Yep.
And so who's setting an alarm for 3 a.m.? Like he's just obsessive about making sure this is the most amazing product ever, and we're not done. So yeah, it's been so exciting. But yeah.
All right, Lucky. Looks like you changed appearances since our last scene here, but no, just kidding. Lucky is here. He is the co-founder, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
for the AI Burn Bot.
For AI Vouched FYI.
Vouched FYI. There we go. Thank you for the correction there. And I would love to know what does that look like from a user perspective for someone looking to use the platform?
You know, what we're looking was to solve a problem.
Mhm.
And what we saw that there's just no way of one person knowing what the other person was doing. And that created like that anxiety that we feel when we're looking for a job, you're laid off, you're like, you know what? I want some kind of response. You either unemployment's running out, all these factors like kind of was like from experience.
Yeah.
I was like, I would love to know what the employer just did with my resume. Did they even look at it? Did they even consider it?
Yeah.
So a lot of that part of the building, I mean, there's almost 100 endpoints
Yeah.
into the whole I mean, there's about 89 variables that are built in.
So does the employer opt in and the employee opt in, or does the just on the employee side and the bot goes and figures out anything of
The reality is actually really not a bot. So it's actually a whole, it's all fully web serverless function.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm not even hosting nothing. It's just really all in my database. It's all expandable, built, yeah, I can grow this thing to whatever, scale it.
Yeah.
It's scalable from day one. So as we were building, we were like considering different markets already. Like it wasn't just from like, well, I'll keep it here.
Yeah.
But the idea was to how can we globally duplicate it? And that this is like going to be one of those, the development was the framework was already developed for expansion.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I know you mentioned it, or perhaps people who don't traditionally come from AI and they're at a mid-career range point where they can transform those abilities and also just have a better shot at getting a job. I just think there are so many college students as well that are looking for jobs right now. The market's not been great anytime recently. I think the last time it was okay was about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And go ahead, yeah.
And I think part of that is just that so many things that changed. And, so many different language models have just come out. And it's like the best advice I had somebody given to me from my mentor was like, pick a rabbit and go with it.
Yeah.
Because right now, you can pick, any language model. You go to ChatGPT, you go to Cloud, but like, if you're going to build on something that's going to be solid, what everybody else is building on. So most core networks are being used Cloud on the under the hood. So why not get good at it? So that's basically how I got it to the Cloud. Just dedicate my my learning capability, and I can just advise somebody just pick one rabbit.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that advice as well. I actually hear that quite often, which is pick one thing, focus on it, love it as much as you can, and then just sprint towards it. So I'm pretty sure our last guest shared that exact same advice too. So that's really neat to hear. That said, right, I know we've talked a little about why, what it does, why Arizona, which I love that you guys ran into that. And I didn't even have to ask that part. But if there is one message you can leave the world about what you're building, what would that be?
Oh gosh, uh, transparency. I think it's good to be in a world where people want transparency. Yes, and to be honest and upfront, because people deserve that. From employer's perspective or the employee, not to ghost each other.
Yes.
And that was one of the reasons we built 14-day, like I have it within like our system it's a 14-day guarantee.
Yep.
Where the employer has to respond within 14 days. I mean, they're getting scored on this as well. There's a whole metrics that's built into
Yeah.
what's the response time? What's the employee job seeker's response time? And there's a transparency and a duty to both.
Yes.
Because one's looking to fill a spot and the other one's like, hey, I'm looking for a job. So they both need to understand like what the other hand is doing so they can make other decision and not just throw resumes out there that may not end up getting anything.
Yeah, that is so funny because I 100% agree with that. And not to a cliche degree, I'll even stretch it back just a little more. We as a society owe it to each other as humans a response on things. That's my personal opinion. I hear some of my friends' dating life where they're like, oh, they ghosted me. I was like, that's not even professional. Like, as someone who's raising boys, Like, you owe a girl a response if you're not interested. Like, you 100% need to respond. So, in my opinion, that much more when you're dealing with job situations where it's like, hey, there's an opening. If you're not a fit, even if the bot has to do that, right? On their end, you're not a fit. But no, that's awesome. I 100% love that message, that mission and message of transparency. And where can people find you guys?
You can find us on Vouched.fyi, and we'll leave a link in the bio.
Yeah, we'll post that along with a LinkedIn post that we do. And then is there a website? I mean, I think that was a website. Is there a LinkedIn page as well?
Yeah,
Are there socials or?
we have all our socials on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Substack. So we're just kind of slowly getting the stuff out there, but we're not. Yeah,
All good.
we're trying to make quality, not quantity.
It's brilliant.
Really, that's a focus.
Agreed. Well, then if there's nothing else, I'll give you guys back the rest of your day. I'm glad that we both live in Mesa. It's nice to have other builders out here in the East Valley. But Arizona, you heard it. You heard where you can find them. You heard what they're doing. If you're looking for a job and you're in that transition period, this is an awesome company to check out. That is it for this edition of the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Lucky for coming on our show today. Super appreciate you. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you.